There is a distinct type of anxiety that sets in when a fundamental pillar of your daily existence, something you took for granted, like gravity or oxygen, suddenly signals that it is leaving. We often obsess over the macroeconomy, the scrolling ticker on CNBC, the Federal Reserve interest rates, or the unemployment charts presented by pundits in suits. But the actual economy, the kitchen table economy where you and I live, is measured in tangible realities. It is the price of a dozen eggs. It is the cost to replace a bald tire. And it is measured at the checkout counter of the single most dominant force in American consumption, Walmart. For generations, the Walmart Pact was simple. It was an unwritten social contract. They built a logistical miracle, squeezed global suppliers until they bled, and scoured the earth for the lowest manufacturing costs. In return, you received stability. You got rollbacks. You had the assurance that even if the world was burning, the price of socks at the supercenter would remain flat. That was the deal. That was the engine of the globalization era. But what happens when that engine seizes up? Not because customers disappeared, and not because Walmart forgot how to ship boxes, but because the government rewrote the rule book so drastically that the business logic dissolved. We are staring at a headline that feels like a glitch in the American matrix. We are looking at a narrative suggesting that the largest private employer in the country, a company synonymous with the American heartland, is making a cold, calculated pivot away from the United States. Walmart ditching the US sounds impossible. It sounds like saying the fish are divorcing the water. But if you analyze the policy shifts in the White House and trace their impact down to the loading docks, this isn't fear-mongering. It is the inevitable economic result of a specific political choice. We are talking about tariffs. We are talking about the collision between a political ideology that believes we can tax our way to national greatness and the economic reality of a business that survives by moving goods across borders. When headlines say Walmart is pulling back, what they mean is a fundamental restructuring of their survival strategy. Why? Because the cost of serving the American shopper under these aggressive new protectionist policies has become mathematically impossible. To grasp this, we must strip away the rhetoric. There is plenty of tough talk about punishing foreign competitors and making them pay. That plays well at a rally. But in the cold light of a corporate boardroom, a tariff is just a tax. Crucially, it is a tax paid at the border by the importer by Walmart. When the administration drops a blanket tariff, they are handing a massive tax bill to American retailers. Walmart operates on razor-thin margins. They rely on volume, not high markups. They cannot simply absorb a 20 or 60% hike in the cost of inventory. They face a binary choice. One, pass the cost to you, which destroys their entire brand identity of low prices. Or two, look at the global map and decide that the US market with its artificial costs is no longer the smart place to invest. They might shift supply chains. They might move inventory. They might focus on markets where the government isn't actively trying to inflate the cost of a toaster. This is the story buried beneath the political drama. If Walmart is signaling a retreat, if they are reducing their US footprint or cutting the American consumer out of the best supply chains, that is a blinking red light for the whole economy. This is a story about the viability of the American standard of living. It challenges what happens when political posturing overrides economic mechanics. We are watching the economic system of the last 40 years being dismantled brick by brick, and the bill comes due next Tuesday at your grocery store. When the dust settles, politicians won't pay the price, you will. To understand the gravity, look at the machine Sam Walton built in Bentonville. We see Walmart as a store, but economically, it is an import engine. It is a vacuum cleaner sucking up goods from Asia and depositing them in American living rooms. For decades, the US accepted a grand bargain. We let domestic manufacturing atrophy. We watched factories close in the Rust Belt. Politicians told us this was the natural order. We lost the factory jobs, but we gained access to an infinite river of cheap goods. You don't make the microwave, but you can buy it for $40. Walmart was the physical embodiment of that bargain. They perfected the logistics of moving containers from Shenzhen to Kansas faster than anyone. But now, that machine is grinding its gears. Not because the ships broke, but because the political consensus that fueled the machine has been set on fire. The first Trump trade war was a skirmish, steel, aluminum. But what drives this current Exodus narrative is total escalation. We are talking about universal tariffs, viewing every incoming ship as an economic invasion. When you institute a blanket tariff of 10 or 20%, you detonate the foundation of the discount retail model. Let's do the boring math. Walmart makes pennies on a $5 t-shirt. Their power is selling 1 billion of them. If the government adds a $1 tax to that shirt, and Walmart's profit was only 50 cents, the business model evaporates. They are now losing money on every sale. They can't just tell shareholders, sorry, we're burning cash. Option A, raise the price to $7. But their customers, living paycheck to paycheck, stop buying. Option B, stop selling t-shirts in America. Look at the map. Where else can we do business? This is where the ditching happens. Walmart looks at its birthplace, the USA, and sees a hostile environment not due to corporate taxes, but due to inventory taxes. So they pivot. They look at Mexico. They look at India. They look for markets where the government isn't making imports prohibitively expensive. Incentives are realigning. It used to be build in China, sell in America. Now, thanks to tariffs, it's build in Vietnam, sell anywhere but the place with the paywall at the border. The irony is thick. The goal of tariffs is to bring manufacturing back. The theory is Walmart will be forced to buy t-shirts made in South Carolina, but that assumes the factory exists. It assumes the workforce exists. Supply chains don't turn on a dime. You cannot replace 40 years of infrastructure with a press release. So we are left in a void. Foreign goods become too expensive, domestic goods don't exist, and the retailer packs up and leaves. This is the dismantling of the consumer economy. When Walmart decides the US market is too risky, they aren't just closing stores, they are rewiring global capital. They are effectively saying the American consumer is no longer the world's best customer. Why would we be if everything we buy has a penalty tax? Walmart has the best data on earth. They see the demand cliff coming. Rather than drive off it, they are steering the ship to calmer waters. The path of least resistance used to lead to the American suburb. Now that path is blocked. Walmart is doing what any rational actor does, finding a new path that might bypass us entirely. We must be clear about who gets hurt. When elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. The grass here is the American family earning under $50,000 a year. There is no free money, and there is no free trade war. The cost of tariffs is not borne by China. It is transferred immediately to your receipt. Economists call this a regressive tax. It hits the poor harder than the rich. If you are a billionaire, a 20% hike in milk prices is a rounding error. But if you are a single parent, that 20% is a catastrophe. It's the difference between dinner and hunger. This is the cruelty of the policy. So who wins? Follow the money. The federal government collects the tariff revenue, a slush fund, to hand out subsidies to industries hurt by retaliation. It's a broken cycle. The government breaks your leg, then uses your money to buy you a crutch. Inefficient domestic industries also win. They love tariffs because it cripples their foreign competition, allowing them to raise prices without innovating. But look at the asymmetry. When Walmart retreats, they are abandoning the proxy war for low prices. Walmart has billions. They will survive. The family in rural Ohio does not have a plan B. This brings us to the issue of access. In many towns, Walmart is the infrastructure, grocery, pharmacy, bank, tire shop. If they scale back, we will see retail deserts expand. Communities hollowed out, not by nature, but by policy. This decision prioritizes a nostalgic fantasy of industrialism over the urgent reality of millions who just need to afford their lives. The tragedy is that those hurt the most are often those who cheered for the tough talk, not realizing the weapon was aimed at their purchasing power. America First, filtered through tariffs, puts the American consumer last. Here is where the political theater turns dark. When prices spike and shelves empty, the architects of these tariffs won't admit fault. They won't say, we raised your cost of living. Instead, they will pivot to a narrative of blame. They will point at Walmart and scream corporate greed or price gouging. They need a villain, and a faceless giant is perfect. But we must be smarter. Walmart has a fiduciary duty not to burn money. If the government makes importing a losing proposition, the company must stop. Expecting them to absorb losses out of loyalty is a fantasy. It's asking a shark to stop swimming. That is the blinking red light. It signals that the US is losing its status as the safe harbor for global capital. For 70 years, our selling point was stability. But if the government acts erratically, slapping tariffs on everyone, we stop looking like an anchor and start looking like a liability. Walmart is the canary in the coal mine. If the world's biggest retailer decides the risk premium in America is too high, what is Apple thinking? What is Ford thinking? We risk capital flight, where companies move their focus away from us. They will stop innovating for the American shopper and design for the Indian or European consumer. We become a legacy market, expensive and difficult. It is a death spiral triggered by political vanity. We are replacing a global trade web with a fortress economy. The problem with fortresses is that they keep resources and innovation out. Eventually, the people inside realize they are trapped. Walmart's move proves the house is losing, the smart money is exiting, and as usual, we are left holding the bag. We spent 30 years arguing if Walmart was good for America, but while we argued, Walmart became the local economy. The supercenter is the town square and the tax base. So when Walmart ditches the US strategy, we are talking about the potential collapse of the economic anchor for huge swaths of the country. If the supply chain shrinks, labor needs shrink, fewer truckers, fewer stockers, fewer clerks. Tariffs are sold as job creators, but they are job destroyers for the logistics and service sectors where most Americans actually work. It is a cruel irony. The policy punishes the foreign adversary, but the impact lands on the checkout clerk in Pennsylvania whose hours get cut. It lands on the family whose paycheck buys 20% less than last month. Putting sand in the gears of the economy degrades the quality of life. We are shifting from an economy of abundance to an economy of scarcity. The new economy says, no, you cannot have the cheap version. Pay the premium or go without. It turns the consumer into a captive. And when a giant like Walmart sees the consumer as a captive, they realize their model is broken. So they invest in robots, focus on affluent suburbs, and leave marginal communities behind. This deepens the divide between the protected and the exposed. The ditching of the US by multinationals is the first sign of a great decoupling. They are decoupling from the American working class. They are deciding our political dysfunction isn't worth the headache, and that leaves us staring at empty shelves, realizing the patriotic bumper sticker didn't mention the store closing down. When the lights go out in the strip mall, it doesn't feel like winning. It feels like we've been sold a bill of goods,